It was another weekend of confusion and contradiction for the Romney camp. After 5 interviews on Friday and a flurry of surrogate appearances, Mitt Romney still cannot clear up the issues with his Bain Capital record. Romney's people are asking President Obama to apologize for raising the issue. President Obama gave the Romney campaign an answer on the trail.
No, we won't be apologizing. And I don't, sometimes these games are played during political campaigns. I understand what the issue is here. Mr. Romney claims that he's Mr. Fix-It for the economy because of his business experience. And so I think voters entirely legitimately want to know, well, what exactly was that business experience? For
the American people, it comes down to what? Responsibility. Mitt Romney cannot adequately explain his involvement with Bain Capital between the years 1999 and 2002. The latest line is Romney retired retroactively.
He actually retired retroactively at that point, David, because he ended up not going back to the firm after his time in Salt Lake City. So he was actually retired from Bain.
Just in case you thought Ed Gillespie made a mistake, he repeated it on CNN.
He took a leave of absence, and in fact, he ended up not going back at all and retired retroactively to February of 1999 as a result.
Did Romney give back the salary he made between 1999 and 2002 when he retired retroactively? Look here, folks. Here's the bottom line. The SEC filings show that Romney made at least $100,000 a year while he was allegedly doing nothing as the CEO of Bain. Maybe Romney should have followed the lead of his father. George Romney stepped down as president of the American Motors Corporation when he ran for office. It was real simple. A report in The Nation says the board elected George Romney as vice chairman, but granted him an indefinite leave of absence without pay. Mitt Romney chose to retroactively retire. In other words, he was double dipping. But more importantly, the Romney campaign still cannot say who was running Bain Capital during the time in question.
Does the governor think that those were good deals for Bain?
Those deals were made by those decisions were made by folks that were running the company differently. So I don't have the details of what the decision making went into it.
They don't have the details. That's a key word right there. Key phrase. They don't have the details. Have you noticed how the Romney camp is kind of short on details? Romney advisor Eric Fernstrom was asked who was running Bain between 1999 and 2002. His response? You should check with Bain, but it wasn't Romney. The Huffington Post checked with the Security and Exchange Commission in 6 different filings between April of 2000 and May of 2001. Mitt Romney was listed as a member of the management committee at Bain. The committee was responsible, key word there, for day-to-day operations of Bain. In one filing, Romney was listed as president and managing director. No one can have titles like this in the business world and not have any responsibilities to a company. Romney's answers are clouding the issue, no doubt. It's getting so bad for Mitt Romney. Even conservative pundits are urging him to release his tax returns to get everything out in the open.
Mitt Romney's losing at this point in a big way. If something's going to come out, get it out in a hurry.
You should release the tax returns tomorrow. It's crazy. You've got to release 6, 8, 10 years of back tax returns. Take the hit for a day or two.
There's obviously something there, because if there was nothing there, he would say have at it. So there's obviously something there that compromises what he said in the past about something. But I think the bigger thing is it's arrogance.
Well, Romney and his campaign insist that they will only release this year's and last year's returns. They are even resorting to fake examples to make their case.
Senator McCain, his Republican nominee in the last election, said was the relevant standard. It's the standard that Senator John Kerry, as the Democratic nominee, said was the standard.
Hang on a second here. John Kerry, you know what he did? He released way more than 2 years of tax returns because he was running the Senate numerous years. In fact, by the time he was running for president in 2004, John Kerry had released 20 years of tax returns. Mitt Romney tried to correct the campaign's mistake when he was on Fox and Friends this morning.
John Kerry ran for president. You know, his wife, who has hundreds of millions of dollars, she never released her tax returns. Right. Somehow this wasn't an issue.
Maybe it wasn't an issue because Teresa Heinz Kerry, she wasn't running for president of the United States. Romney and his campaign, you know what they are? They are really boxed in on this issue, and they don't have an answer. Conservative columnist George Will identified Romney's main issue.
The costs of not releasing the returns are clear. Therefore, he must have calculated that there are higher costs in releasing.
And he's going to tough it out.
The consequences for releasing the tax returns must be pretty bad for Mitt Romney if he would rather just get raked over the coals by conservative talkers for not releasing them. Obama campaign chair Rahm Emanuel had an even better explanation.
To the McCain campaign, he released 23 years. And he's telling the American people, I'm not going to give you what I've given John McCain's people in 2008. And when he gave them 23 years, John McCain's people looked at it and said, let's go with Sarah Palin.
The tax returns are essential to everything Mitt Romney is running on. They explain his real achievements in business. They show how he would try to run the country. They give us a look at what his tax policy would really be and what he believes in. Mitt Romney, I don't think, is making the case to the American people that he would be a president that Americans can trust. It's all about the tax return. Number one, I'd like to know, how is he listed? General partner, president, owner, CEO, and then he signed it. I assume he signed his own tax return, even if he had somebody else put it together, and I'm sure he did if it's 500 pages. But the other thing is the business deductions. Did Mitt Romney have any write-offs or any business deductions that dealt with Bain Capital? Because if it did, he's flat out lying to the American people when he says he had no involvement. The IRS thought it was involvement because it deals with the Ching. No question about that. And also, maybe Mitt Romney has made the political calculation that it's just a heck of a lot safer and a hell of a lot easier to lie to the American people than it is to the Internal Revenue Service. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think. Tonight's question. This is a good one. What will do more damage to Mitt Romney's campaign? Releasing his tax returns or not releasing his tax returns? Text A for releasing his returns. Text B for not releasing his returns. The 622-639, our blog is right there for you at ed.msnbc.com. We'll bring the results later on in the show. I'm joined tonight by MSNBC political analyst Richard Wolff and Rick Tyler, Republican strategist and former communications director for Newt Gingrich. Gentlemen, great to have you with us tonight. Richard, you first.
Yep.
What is his avenue out of this mess, out of this maze? You do 5 interviews to try to clear things up. It only made things worse, and they're having a hard time explaining all of this. What's the avenue of relief?
Well, look, the easy answer is to say release the tax returns. But actually, there's a step or 5 before that, which is, first of all, decide which avenue you're going to take. You know, one of the problems Mitt Romney has right now is indecision. It's that his story keeps on changing. First of all, they said, well, everyone else has done this. That's not true. Then you'd end up talking about John Kerry's wife, which is ridiculous. You say the Obama people will never be satisfied. Or you say it's a complete dodge. They've said all of these things over the last several days, and it's a bit like his response on the Bain question. The story keeps on changing. If you think back to what actually happened to John Kerry, yes, the Swift boat attacks were terrible, but the indecision, the weakness that you're broadcasting about your own character as a leader is, I would argue, just as damaging.
So he didn't solve anything on Friday, and as we move forward in this campaign, they don't seem to have any clear-cut answers. At least it's been 36, 72 hours. It goes on and on. How do they fix it, though? What would they come out and say to fix it?
Well, he does have to take the hit. I would argue, actually, that Friday's comments made it worse. In trying to project strength and say, I'm punching back here, he overstepped the mark. He said, not just I had no active role in Bain, but I had no responsibility. Yeah. That was his word. And then you get into that whole buck-passing thing that Rahm Emanuel described so well.
Rick Tyler, your campaign, the Gingrich campaign, raised these issues in the primary. Did the GOP miss it? I mean, wasn't anybody in the GOP beyond Newt Gingrich taking this more seriously? Why weren't they?
Well, look, if you remember, we did release all these SEC documents we had in January of this year. That was 6 months ago. The media wasn't very interested in it on our side. Frankly, the Romney campaign actually did a good job. They won the debate with us, which was they had reframed this to an attack on free enterprise, and all the conservative commentators bought that. It wasn't an attack on free enterprise, but that's what happened. Mitt Romney might do well to go back and try to claim the mantle of free enterprise versus Obama's statism. That might be a way to go. But I think at this point, he had opportunities in 2008 during the primary to clear this up. He decided to delineate a very bright line in 1999 about going to the Olympics. And documentation and salaries, as you've pointed out, are inconsistent with that, and he's going to have to explain it. I think at this point, the best thing for him to do is full transparency and get it out there. It's not just the Obama campaign, who, by the way, I think that'd be the thing they don't want is to happen, is to have them release everything, have everybody pour through it, because I suspect this is a lot to do about nothing. I don't think there's anything illegal that was done here.
It's not a question of whether it's illegal. It's not a question of whether it's illegal. It's a question about what he was doing and what the company was doing that he was the head of in 1999 to 2003, because that's when they were outsourcing jobs.
Well, I disagree with your assertion that we'll find out what his tax policy is by looking at his tax return. We'll find out things like how much he made and who he made it from and how he filed and what kind of interest he has in it. I do think the American public does have some interest in that if he's going to run for president of the United States.
I think we would find out what his tax. Respectfully, I think we would find out what his tax policy would be, because there's an awful lot of write-ups in there that I'm sure that he would continue to support, or he wouldn't have taken them. And obviously, he is not releasing it for everybody to see. The point I made earlier is that if he took business write-ups with Bain, would you consider that a connection to the company?
If he could legally take write-offs, he should take write-offs.
But he's saying that he's not connected with them. He might be entitled to it, but he says he had on Friday he had said he had no connection with the company.
And that's a political problem. You know, he says he didn't have decision-making capacity at Bain. They negotiated. You know, he said he took a leave of absence and then decided not to go back to the company. You know, this retroactive thing. While it's true the way they did that, I don't think that's untrue, but it just doesn't play politically well. I think Romney, back in 1999 when he left for the Olympics, he should have been thinking about this. In fact, he was going to run. Because the only way this is a problem is that you run for president. Otherwise, none of this is a problem.
Well, he's running for president, and the American people want some answers on this. But, Richard, when you take a look at how he is handling this, how long will it be before the Republican Party steps out? Not the people on TV on Sunday. I mean, I'm talking about, when does Newt Gingrich step up? Right. When does Rick Santorum? How can they be silent on this?
Well, maybe that's a question for Rick.
Well, I'm going to get it from you first, though.
I do think that he is the presumptive nominee at this point, and there is a window here for things to go spectacularly wrong for him. So as long as the polls are close and he can, string this along to convention time, he's okay. But, there could be a real moment of peril here, a few more weeks of this, if the polls really start to move, where you get people who have suspended, quote-unquote, suspended their campaign.
Yeah, Herman Cain, how can he be quiet? Rick Tyler, what do you think of that? I mean, how long is Newt going to be quiet on this? 3, 4 weeks? What's the date he's going to come out and say, we got a challenge candidate here?
Well, that could happen if the campaign cannot figure out a way to dispense with these types of issues, because now we know how the Obama campaign intends to operate, and that is they're going to obfuscate Obama's record as long as they can, so they have to talk about it. Think about it. We've been talking about this now for going on 5 days. In the meantime, and then there was a poll, there was some memo out by Newman that released a memo, I think earlier today, that talked about how great it was they were a parody because Barack Obama spent $51 million and they're only a parody. I would argue that he spent $51 million at parody. To be a parody, that's a good thing, because this is the worst economy, the worst debt, the worst deficit spending. You have health care, which nobody wants.
Well, he sure inherited it.
You're
right about that.
Shouldn't. We should not be even. Mitt Romney should be far ahead, and he's got to fix this political problem so he can be.
Richard
and then
Wolff
we'll return to the economy as a debate.
Thanks for joining us, Senate. I appreciate it. Remember to answer tonight's question there at the bottom of the screen. Share your thoughts on Twitter at Ed Show and on Facebook. We want to know what you think. Coming up, President Obama is going directly after Mitt Romney's business experience and what it would mean for America. Chuck Rocha joins me for the discussion. Stay with us.